They thought they had bought an old ruin to start a new life. But as soon as the builder opened the wall, the former owner's past led them to something that no one was supposed to see. Subscribe and write in the comments which city you are watching from. Merrick Thompson had always believed that a person could build a life the same way he built a house, board by board, nail by nail, with enough stubbornness to keep his hands moving even when his heart was full of doubt. He had spent most of his 26 years learning how to make 4 walls stand straight, how to pour concrete that didn't crack, how to coax old wood back to life and shape new wood into something that felt permanent. But despite all his skill and all his determination, he had never held a key to a door that truly belonged to him. His work existed in the background of other people's dreams homes, bought, sold, remodeled, and torn down by those who could afford the luxury of ownership. He built foundations, but lived without one. All of that began to change on a humid summer evening, when he came home from another long shift, smelling of sawdust and plaster, to find his wife, Lily, sitting at their tiny second-hand dining table with tears on her cheeks. Lily was 24, gentle by nature, but stronger than even she realized. She had spent the last 3 years working as a nurse, absorbing grief and stress from the hospital like a sponge. Every day she came home with stories she tried not to tell. Stories about loss, about fear, about people who arrived in the emergency room too late or in too much pain. Lately, those stories had begun slipping through the cracks of her composure. That night, she sat with her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of cold tea, staring at the wall as though it held answers she desperately needed. "I can't do it anymore," she said when he walked in. The quiet in her voice scared him more than shouting ever could. "I can't live like this. Not in this apartment. Not waking up to sirens and trying to fall asleep listening to the neighbors fight through the walls. I want something ours, Merrick. Something that doesn't feel borrowed." He sank into the chair opposite her, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. "I want that too," he said softly. "You know I do. But houses cost. I don't mean a house in the city. I don't mean anything fancy." She looked at him then, and for the first time in months, he saw a spark of hope in her exhausted eyes. What if we left? What if we started over somewhere else? Someplace quiet. Someplace we could afford, even if it's old and broken. You can fix anything, Merrick. I've seen you bring life back into places everyone else walked away from. The idea lodged itself inside him, stubborn and persistent. For years he had dreamed of a place where he could build something lasting, where he wouldn't have to answer to foremen or contractors, a place where the work he did wasn't temporary. He took Lily's hands, rough from hours of sanitizers and gloves, and held them against his chest. "If we do this," he said, "we'll be starting from nothing." A shaky smile touched her lips. "Nothing is more than we have now." Within a month, they sold everything that didn't fit into the back of their aging sedan: Lily's grandmother's cabinet, Merrick's tools except for the essentials, their sofa, their mismatched kitchen chairs, even the television they rarely had time to watch, their wedding gifts, bedding, decorations, a fancy coffee machine, were boxed and listed online, each sale both painful and cleansing. By the time the apartment stood nearly empty, they had scraped together just enough to make the smallest, most fragile kind of leap. That leap came in the form of a county auction held in an old brick municipal building that smelled of dust and burnt coffee. Rows of metal folding chairs filled the room, occupied by farmers in worn hats, older couples looking for retirement land, and property flippers with narrowed eyes who scanned each listing like predators. Merrick and Lily found 2 chairs near the back. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing like anxious insects. The auctioneer, a tall man with a thinning comb-over, read through each listing with the practiced speed of someone who had no patience left for theatrics. Most properties were snapped up quickly. Small lots, mobile homes, storage units sold to bidders who clearly knew what they were getting. But then came a listing that made several people in the room shift uncomfortably. Next lot. Ratcliffe Farm, 12 acres. House built 1921, outbuildings included. Sold as is. Condition, abandoned. Minimum starting bid, $13,000. Several people groaned. One man muttered, "That cursed place again," loud enough for Merrick to hear. No details were offered about why the farm inspired such reactions, and the listing's single photograph, grainy, dark, and taken from too far away, showed little beyond a sagging farmhouse and overgrown land. Lily leaned closer. "It looks awful," she whispered. "Yes," Merrick murmured, though he couldn't look away from the picture. "But the bones look good, foundation's still straight. And look at the porch-wide, good structure. Someone cared about that house once." The idea pulsed again inside him, stronger now, calling to his hands, to his sense of purpose. The auctioneer waited, eyebrows raised. "Do I have any bids?" Silence. A few people shook their heads, unwilling even to consider it. Merrick lifted their numbered paddle. Lily's fingers tightened around his arm as though she might pull him back from a cliff. "Merrick." He met her gaze. "We said we were ready." She swallowed, then nodded. "Okay. Together." No one else bid. The auctioneer banged his gavel almost wistfully, like he pitied them. Sold. The drive to the farm took them miles beyond the city, then beyond the suburbs, and finally beyond even the small towns that seemed barely alive. Their cell service dropped as the road narrowed, winding between tall trees that bent toward each other as if whispering secrets. By the time they reached the gravel drive leading to their land, the sky was beginning to cloud, casting the world in a muted, silvery light. The entrance to the property was marked by a rusted metal sign that hung crookedly from two rotting posts. The letters were barely legible, something that may once have read Ratcliffe Farm. Weeds stood waist-high on either side of the drive, brushing against the car like fingers. Lily shivered as they pushed forward. When the house finally came into view, they both fell silent. It stood alone in a clearing, tall and pale, its paint peeling in long, curling strips like old parchment. The roof sagged in several places, and the front porch railing had collapsed. One shutter hung by a single hinge. Despite all of that, the structure looked solid, anchored deeply into the earth, as though determined to survive whatever time had done to it. Lily stepped out first, breathing in the wild, earthy smell of the place. "It's bigger than I expected," she said softly. "It's beautiful," Merrick murmured, surprising even himself. He walked toward the house, feeling an odd pressure in his chest, a sense of familiarity he couldn't explain, as though he had seen this place in a dream long before he knew it existed. Inside, the air was thick with dust and neglect. Cobwebs draped across doorways, and the wooden floors creaked beneath their weight. In the front room, a wooden table stood beneath a window, one corner warped from water damage. On it lay a half-written letter, the ink faded but still visible. "If someone finds this..." The sentence trailed off. Lily hovered near the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. "Maybe we shouldn't read it," she murmured. "It feels like walking in on someone's private thoughts." Marek touched the paper gently, but did not turn it over. Maybe they wanted it to be found. In the hallway, they found an old coat still hanging on a hook, stiff with time. In the kitchen, a ceramic mug rested beside the dry sink, ringed with the ghost of long evaporated tea. Every object in the house seemed frozen on the last day someone had lived here, as though the previous owner had stepped outside expecting to return, only to vanish from the world. Marek wandered deeper, drawn to the craftsmanship. The staircase balustrade was carved from thick oak. The kitchen cabinets were handmade, but something felt off. In one wall, the boards were too new, lighter in color. In another, the studs were spaced unevenly, a strange deviation from standard construction. He stepped back, frowning. Someone was rebuilding parts of this, he said. They were planning something big. Maybe they didn't finish. Lily looked uneasy. Or maybe they shouldn't have started. Upstairs, the air grew colder and the shadows heavier. At the end of the hall stood a narrow door, locked with an old iron latch from the outside. Lily hesitated. Why would someone lock a room from the outside? She whispered. Merrick didn't have an answer. When he touched the latch, it rattled, but the door held firm. He felt Lily's breath against his shoulder. Warm, nervous human grounding him in a house that felt increasingly inhuman. That night, they inflated their small mattress in the living room, the only space that felt remotely safe. The storm outside grew stronger, rain thrashing against the roof, wind wailing through gaps in the window frames. Lily pressed close to Merrick. Maybe we rushed, she said, voice trembling. Maybe this is too much. He stroked her hair. We've handled worse. This is just a house, wood and nails. But sometime after midnight, a heavy thud echoed from somewhere deep within the house. Not the sharp scurry of mice or the light scattering of debris. This was weighty, deliberate, final. Lily bolted upright, eyes wide. Merrick, tell me you heard that. He grabbed his flashlight and stood. Probably something fell, maybe a loose board. As he walked down the hall, the beam of the flashlight jittered across the walls. Everything was still. No fallen furniture, no broken beams. Yet he had the unmistakable sensation that something had moved just moments before he arrived, retreating into silence. Back in the living room, he forced a reassuring smile for Lily's sake. It's nothing. Old house noises. But she saw the truth in his eyes, and her fear deepened. Before trying to sleep again, Merrick noticed a small wooden box pushed partially beneath the collapsed porch railing. Curious, he pulled it out, brushing away dirt. Inside were yellowed envelopes, addressed only with initials. ER. The handwriting was delicate, almost elegant. He opened one at random. To the one who continues this house, his skin prickled. The letter was written decades ago, yet the words felt directed at him, as though the writer had known someone like Marek would one day stand exactly where he stood now. He tucked the box under his arm and returned to Lily, saying only that he had found something old. As the storm raged on, they lay together on the flimsy mattress, the house settling around them with groans like distant memories resurfacing. Marek closed his eyes, listening to the heartbeat of the old structure, feeling its weight and its sorrow. Something about the place felt too full of history, too full of unspoken intentions, as though the walls themselves were bracing for someone finally brave or foolish enough to uncover its truths. He held Lily closer. She trembled in his arms. And for the first time since they arrived, he wondered whether the house had been waiting for them, or whether it had been waiting for anyone at all. The storm had passed by morning, leaving behind the metallic scent of rain-soaked earth and a dense, shimmering fog that curled around the trees like smoke. When Marek stepped outside, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, the world felt muted and suspended, as though the land itself were holding its breath. Lily remained on their makeshift mattress, staring at the ceiling with an expression that wavered somewhere between exhaustion and dread. Neither of them had slept well. The echoes of the night, the thud inside the walls, the wind clawing at the windows, the uneasy stillness afterward, clung stubbornly to their nerves. The house felt different now, not simply abandoned, but aware, unsettled by their presence. Marek tried to shake off the feeling. He told himself it was only the fatigue of the previous day, the strangeness of a new environment, the weight of responsibility pressing down harder now that the excitement of ownership had faded. Yet as he walked through the hallway, the floorboards groaning beneath him, he couldn't deny the sense that the house was waiting. For what? He couldn't yet guess. He found Lily sitting at the kitchen table they had dragged closer to the window to catch the morning light. Her hair was tousled, her face pale. She held a notebook and pen, as though trying to distract herself by making a list of things they needed to fix. But her eyes kept drifting to the box of letters from the night before. The initials ER seemed to pulse faintly on the envelopes, almost as though they might rise from the paper if she stared long enough. "Did you read any of them?" she asked softly as he entered. "Not yet," Merrick answered. He poured water from a jug they'd filled in town and drank deeply, trying to feel present, grounded. "I wanted to wait until we were both awake." "I'm not sure I want to read them," Lily murmured. "It feels like stepping into someone else's grief." Merrick pulled out the chair opposite her and sat, the old wood groaning beneath his weight. "We're already inside it," he said, gesturing to the room around them. "Everything here is part of someone's story. If we're going to fix this house, we need to understand it." Lily didn't respond immediately. Instead, she opened the top envelope and unfolded the brittle paper. Her hands trembled slightly, and when she began to read, her voice was barely louder than the whispers of the wind through the cracked kitchen window. "To the one who continues this house," she read aloud, "I do not know your name, or the year in which you will find these words. I do not know whether my husband and I are remembered, whether the walls we began will stand long after we leave them behind. But if you are reading this, then you are a builder of some kind, and this house has chosen you." Lily stopped. Her eyes flicked up to Merrick, who leaned forward, frowning. "Chosen?" he repeated. "That's a strange way to put it." "Keep reading," he urged. She continued. "My husband is creating a place of safety, a shell within a shell. He says a home should protect the heart of a family. I fear he is working against time. He is ill, though he refuses to say it aloud. I write these letters in secret because I feel I too am fading. If you complete what he began, then perhaps you will understand why we stayed even as the nights grew darker." Lily folded the letter slowly, as though afraid it would crumble into dust. "She was dying," she whispered. "Both of them were, maybe. And they kept building anyway." Marek stared at the letter for a long moment. It explained the odd construction choices, the mismatched walls, the unfinished repairs. "If they were sick," he said, "maybe that's why the house was left like this. Maybe that's why no one finished anything." "But why the letters? Why hide them?" Lily asked. He didn't know. The question lingered in the air like the fog outside, heavy, unanswered, thickening. Later that day, Merrick began what he had intended to start even before reading the letters, the real inspection of the house. He entered each room, tapping on walls, checking beams, pulling up loose boards. Lily followed more hesitantly, as though entering spaces that did not yet belong to them. In the hallway, Merrick paused at the spot where the sound from last night had seemed to come. He tapped the wall with the handle of his hammer, hollow, but not just hollow muffled, as if padded from within. "Something's behind here," he said. Lily stepped back. "You mean, like another room?" "Maybe. Or a crawl space." He pried at the baseboard with the hammer, cracking through old paint. A board gave way, releasing a puff of dust. Beneath it, something wooden and flat protruded a panel rather than a structural wall. Lily helped him pull it free, revealing a narrow gap. The space was dark, but the air that flowed from it felt strangely cool, as though preserved. Marek reached in with a flashlight and froze. "There's a door," Lily inhaled sharply. A door inside the wall? Yes, he whispered. The light reflected off something metallic, a handleless wooden door, built into the structure but concealed. Merrick gripped the edges and pulled. The door resisted, its hinges stiff with age, but after several heaves, it opened with a long, trembling groan. Dust swirled out, carrying the dry scent of forgotten years. Behind the door was a small room, barely the size of a closet, but carefully constructed. Shelves lined the walls with tools arranged neatly as though waiting for hands that would never return. In the center stood a sturdy work table, atop which lay a leather-bound journal. Marek stepped inside, feeling a chill prickle at the back of his neck. It was as though he had intruded into someone's sanctuary, a space untouched since its creator last breathed within it. He picked up the journal and opened it. The handwriting inside was tight, precise, methodical. Notes on measurements, sketches of hidden structures, scribbled reminders. On one page, he saw the name, Henry Ratcliffe. "This must be the husband," he murmured. Lily, who hovered at the threshold, nodded. So he built all this. Marek flipped through the journal. The entries grew darker, more frantic. Henry wrote of pressure, of family tension, of time slipping away. He mentioned a son, our little builder, he called him. But there were no photographs of a child anywhere in the house. No toys, no clothes, nothing. He had a kid, Marek said. But where is he now? There were no answers, only more questions. In the corner of the hidden room, Marek noticed a heavy metal container half buried under an old blanket. Its surface was rusted, but intact, fitted with a massive lock. It looked important, too important to ignore. "I'll need tools to open it," he said. "No," Lily said suddenly, gripping his arm. "Look." She pointed to the floor. One of the boards was slightly raised, unlike the others. When Marek pried it up, beneath it, nestled in a shallow recess, lay a small iron key, the exact size for the container. Marek exchanged a silent glance with Lily. Something about this discovery felt staged, almost deliberate, as though Henry had intended this moment. He inserted the key. The lock clicked. Inside the container lay documents tied with twine, a bundle of old letters, and several sepia-toned photographs. One of them showed Henry with a woman Elizabeth, presumably, and a small boy with dark curls. The boy held a wooden toy hammer. He looked no older than 5. "Why is there nothing of him in the house now?" Lily whispered, her hand covering her mouth. Marek opened the first letter in the bundle. It was addressed, "To the one who completes the house." Henry's handwriting was shaky but determined. "If you are reading this, I am gone. They will come for what they believe is theirs, the land, the documents, the future of this farm. But they cannot have the truth. Only someone who understands the meaning of building, someone patient enough to listen to the house, will complete what I began. The farm should belong to those who can protect it. I pray it finds the right hands." Marek closed the letter slowly. His throat tightened. Lily stepped closer, her eyes shining with fear and awe. "They tried to take it from him," she said. "Someone tried to take everything." "And he was trying to hide something or protect something," Marek added. "Maybe both." As they stood in the hidden room, surrounded by the remnants of a life lived half in shadow, the weight of the farm's history pressed down upon them. It wasn't just a derelict house. It was a battle site, a refuge, a grave for secrets. That evening, as the sun began to set, Lily heard footsteps outside the house. Not animals. Steps that hesitated, then retreated. When she rushed to the window, she saw nothing but the darkening trees. "We're not alone here," she whispered when Marek joined her. He put a hand on her shoulder. "Whoever was here, They know we found something." Lily didn't answer. She only watched the tree line, her pulse quickening. The house groaned in the settling chill of night. Somewhere within its walls, the structure shifted, as though adjusting to the new occupants, or warning them. Marek looked toward the darkness of the hidden room, the journal open on the table beside the metal container. For the first time since they arrived, he wondered whether the house was simply old, or whether it was holding on to something it wasn't ready to let go. And outside, beyond the porch, fresh tire marks in the dirt suggested that someone else was waiting too. Night settled over the farm with a heaviness that Marek had not felt before, as though the weight of every secret buried beneath the soil pressed upward, straining against the quiet surface. After discovering the metal container, the letters, the photographs, and Henry's desperate plea, neither he nor Lily could look at the house the same way again. They moved through the rooms with more caution, more awareness, as though afraid that speaking too loudly might disturb something that was not entirely gone. The house no longer felt abandoned. It felt inhabited by memories sharp enough to wound, by a grief so old it had settled into the grain of the wood, by the quiet determination of a man who had tried until his last breath to protect what he loved. And now, someone else was lurking outside, someone who wanted what Henry had hidden. The discovery of the tire tracks left a chill in Marek's spine. Lily, already shaken, kept glancing toward the windows that showed only darkness. The night pressed so tightly against the glass that she couldn't tell if something stood just beyond the line of sight. Marek tried to reassure her, but even he couldn't deny the feeling that eyes watched them from the tree line. He checked the locks on every door, even though most of them were so old and warped that he doubted they would hold against anything more determined than the wind. They tried to sleep, but rest came only in fragments. Whenever Marek drifted off, he dreamed of the little boy in the photographed dark curls, small toy hammer in hand, standing in the hall and staring at him without blinking. In the dream, the boy would lift his arm and point behind Marek toward something he never managed to turn around to see. Each time he woke, the house felt colder, the silence inside more pronounced. By morning, Lily's eyes were ringed with shadows. She sat bundled in her sweatshirt at the kitchen table, rubbing warmth into her arms. "We need to understand everything before we decide anything," she said, her voice unsteady. "All of this, Henry, Elizabeth, the child, the hidden room, the letters. We can't stay blind." Marek nodded. "Then we'll talk to someone who knows the history." He hesitated before adding, "Mabel." She knew more than she said. Maybe she's the only one who will tell us the truth. Lily's expression tightened. "Do you trust her?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But she came here, and she knew the family. Right now, that's more than anyone else." They spent the morning sorting through the documents from the container, spreading them across the kitchen table until every inch of wood was covered. Legal papers, letters addressed to lawyers, receipts, deeds, and notes scribbled in Henry's hand. The language was technical, heavy with references to property rights and disputes. Marek guessed that Henry, gifted as he was with building, must have learned enough legal vocabulary to protect himself, or tried to. Among the documents were several letters from Elizabeth to her husband, written during her illness. They were tender, heartbreaking, filled with longing and fear. She wrote about their son in the early letters, how he giggled, how he followed his father around the construction site, imitating every movement. But in the later letters, he was barely mentioned, replaced instead by worry about the family she had come from, wealthy, controlling, and determined to reclaim the land she and Henry had built their home on. One letter made Lily's breath catch. "They want to take him," Elizabeth wrote. "They say you cannot provide what he needs, not like they can. They say they will take everything if you do not sign. But I know you, my love. You will not bend. You will fight, even as your hands tremble. I only pray they do not come when I am too weak to stand beside you." Lily pressed a hand over her mouth, reading it twice before passing it to Merrick. "This wasn't just about land," she whispered. "This was about their son. They wanted the boy. They used the land as leverage." Merrick frowned as he read the letter. Why? Why fight so hard for the farm and the boy? What did they gain from taking him? "The same thing they gain from taking anything," Lily murmured bitterly. "Control." They continued working through the papers until noon, when a vehicle approached the house. Its tires crunched slowly over gravel. Marek stiffened and stepped in front of Lily, who grabbed his arm. But when he looked out through the torn curtains, he exhaled in surprise. "It's Mabel," he said. "She's alone." The old woman climbed out of her truck with surprising agility for her age. Her white curls were tucked under a faded hat, and she carried a thermos and 2 paper bags. When Merrick opened the door, she held up the food like an offering. "Thought you two might need lunch," she said. "And a bit of company." She stepped inside uninvited, but with the confidence of someone who had been in the house many times before. Her eyes swept over the documents on the table, lingering for a moment on the photograph of Henry and the little boy. A heaviness settled in her shoulders. "So you found it," she said quietly. "North wall," Merrick replied, "behind a false panel." Mabel nodded. "He always said he'd hide it somewhere no one would notice. Henry was clever like that." Lily stepped closer. "We need to know what happened," she said. "All of it. The letters talk about family trouble, about illness, about someone taking their son. But there's nothing that tells us where he went or why the house was left like this." Mabel set the food down and lowered herself into a chair. "It's not an easy story," she said, "and some of it isn't mine to tell. But you two deserve to know what you've stepped into." Merrick and Lily sat across from her, bracing themselves. "Henry and Elizabeth weren't like most folks around here," Mabel began. "They married young, but Elizabeth came from money. Old money. Her parents had a whole empire of businesses, factories, real estate, all sorts of things. They didn't think Henry was good enough. A simple builder, they called him. But she loved him enough to leave everything behind. They bought this land together and built the house board by board. Henry wanted to make something that would last forever." She looked around, her eyes softening as they took in the worn walls. "He did a good job considering. But Elizabeth got sick," Lily said gently. Mabel nodded. "Worse than most folks knew. She hid it for a long time. By the time anyone realized how bad it was, she was already near the end. And in those days, she couldn't take care of the boy. That's when her family swooped in. Said Henry wasn't fit. Said the farm wasn't safe. They took the boy to give him a better life, they claimed. Henry fought it at first. But once she passed, he didn't have the strength or the money. Her family had lawyers, power, and the boy was too young to understand what was happening." Lily's voice cracked. "Did the boy ever come back?" Mabel hesitated. "No, not while Henry was alive. The family sent letters saying he was doing well in school, that he had opportunities he'd never have here. But I never believed all of it. The boy loved this place. He loved his father. He used to run across that porch barefoot and wave at me whenever I passed." Merrick exchanged a glance with Lily. "So Henry kept building," he said, "even after he lost them both." "Yes," Mabel replied. "For him, it was a way to hold on, and a way to protect what little was left. He knew they'd try to take the land too, so he hid the documents. He poured every bit of strength he had into finishing this house, so that whoever came next, someone who understood the work, could finish it properly. But he died before he could hand the keys to anyone." Why didn't anyone claim the land? Marek asked. Because Henry never signed anything over. Because Elizabeth's family couldn't find the documents they needed. And because Henry outsmarted them in the end. They gave up looking eventually. Or moved their focus elsewhere. Who knows? Silence settled thickly between them. The story filled the house in a way the emptiness never had, giving shape to the sorrow that had lingered for decades. Mabel rose and moved toward the door. You two need to be careful, she warned. Her family might be old now, but greed doesn't age. If they see someone stirring up the past, they'll come sniffing again. They don't like loose ends. As she left, Marek felt the air change around them, as though the house itself waited to see how they would respond. Lily looked up at him, eyes full of worry. We can't stay here, she said. Now that we know everything, we can't possibly stay. Marek walked toward the window and stared at the farm. The field stretched golden beneath the afternoon sun, the wind moving through the tall grass like a breath. The house behind him stood tall despite its disrepair. It felt less like a burden now and more like a calling. Henry had put everything he had into this place, even after losing what mattered most. There was something remarkable in that kind of devotion. Maybe this is exactly where we're supposed to be, he said softly. Lily blinked in confusion. After everything we've heard? Because of everything we've heard, he said. This house deserves someone to finish what was started. And maybe we need it too. The argument that followed was inevitable, the first true fracture in their young marriage. Lily paced the room, her voice rising as fear turned into frustration. You want to fight a battle that isn't ours? We came here for a peaceful life, not to resurrect someone else's tragedy. Marek didn't raise his voice, but the firmness in his tone only pushed them further apart. This place needs us, Lily. And don't pretend you don't feel it too. Something brought us here. Not fate, she snapped. Not destiny. Just desperation and a bad decision. Her words cut deeper than she intended, and she flinched as soon as they left her lips. But neither of them apologized. They stood on opposite sides of the room, separated not by distance, but by a widening chasm of fear and conviction. Later, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the shadows deepened, Lily slipped outside to the garden that had long ago returned to wildness. She traced her fingers over the weeds, imagining where Elizabeth might have planted herbs or flowers. Something softened in her expression, something fragile and almost hopeful. Marek watched her from the window. He saw her grief, her fear, her longing for something peaceful. He saw himself too stubborn, determined, desperate to rescue something that had been abandoned. He recognized that they were both fighting ghosts. In the days that followed, the farm began to transform. Marek focused on strengthening the bones of the house repairing beams, clearing debris, stabilizing the hidden room. He worked with a kind of feverish purpose, as though each swing of his hammer could mend the sorrow that still lingered between him and Lily. At the same time, Lily turned to the land. She cleared the overgrowth, unearthed old planting beds, and found remnants of the garden Elizabeth had once tended. She planted new seeds, unsure if they would take root, but hopeful nonetheless. They moved like two parallel currents, separate, silent, but drawn by the same force. One evening, as Marek stood in the hidden room, inspecting the support beams he had reinforced, Lily appeared in the doorway. Her hands were covered in soil, her hair pulled back loosely, her expression thoughtful. I was wrong, she said quietly. We weren't meant to run. Not right away. Maybe not at all. Marek turned to her. You don't have to agree with me. Maybe I don't, she said. But I do understand you. She stepped closer. This house, it deserves someone to care. And maybe I need something to care for too. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. their fingers intertwined gently, a wordless truce. As night fell, Mabel returned, holding a weathered envelope. "I should have given you this sooner," she said. "He left it with me. Said he'd know when the right people came along." Inside was Henry's final letter. A letter not about legal matters or fear, but about hope. "A house is not a thing," Henry wrote. "It is a promise that someone will live, love, fight, grow, and rebuild within its walls. Do not mourn what we lost. Finish what we began." Marek folded the letter with reverence. Lily leaned against him, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. Outside, the wind rustled through the fields, stirring the tall grass in slow, sweeping waves. The house no longer felt haunted by loss. It felt full, with purpose, with memory, with possibility. A place waiting not for its owners to return, but for new ones to step forward. And for the first time since arriving, Marek and Lily felt the same truth settle between them. This was their home now, not by inheritance, not by chance, but by choice, a choice they would make together. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. Watch the other videos on the channel and share this one with someone who might need it. Your support helps the channel grow.